This afternoon, we're going to talk about strategic planning, and I'm going to give you some work to do. So I hope you're going to stay sufficiently engaged. My name is Yvonne Witter. So what is strategic planning? It's the process of documenting and establishing a direction for your organization by assessing both where you are and where you're going. And this is usually housed in a position statement. The strategic plan gives you a place to record your mission, your vision, and your values, your long-term goals, and the action plans you'll use to reach them. A well-written strategic plan can play a pivotal role in your organization's growth and success because it tells you and your team how best to respond to opportunities and challenges. This planning process has lots of elements in it, and we're going to go through quite a few of these elements so you get a fair understanding of the process of strategic planning. We'll also go through some simple analytical tools that you can use in the planning process. Why strategic thinking? Why do we need to think in this way even? Strategic thinking enables the project leaders to determine how to use their resources most effectively to advance the organization towards its objectives. Strategic thinking also focuses the management team on projects that are most likely to have greater impact and outcome. So the components of a strategic thought and action, strategic thinking and planning consists of three phases. So as I said before, where we want to be and how we will get there. So I mentioned earlier the positioning statement. Where are you now? So who are your beneficiaries, clients? Develop a list of the needs of the needs that your beneficiary group has that you intend to meet if you're not already doing so. And list the activities and beneficial services that uniquely meet those needs. So I want you to take maybe 5 minutes to write down or think about who your beneficiaries, your clients are. Who are they? I want you to do number 2 also, develop a list of the needs of your beneficiary group has and that you intend to meet. So I want you to do 1 to 3. And number 3 is list the activities and beneficial services that uniquely meet those needs. So who are they that you provide a service for? What needs do they have that you meet or intend to meet? And what activities are you doing? What services are you doing that meet those needs? So 1 to 3, you've got 10 minutes. So if you've done 1 to 3, when you get back, I want you to use the list of beneficiary needs and service benefits to finish this sentence. When this client group thinks of our service, we want them to think, what do you want your service users to say about you? So, what do you want your service users to say about you? The people you provide a service for, what do you want them to say about you? And this is really important because you need to evaluate your positioning statement by making sure it's simple, clear, and consistent. Get the word out to everyone by consistently communicating your positioning message in everything your organization does for this client group. Don't forget the beneficiaries do the real positioning by paying attention and deciding to use your service. What you do have control over is influencing the choice of those that experience your service based on your own strengths. So the better you are, the more directly you meet their needs, the better they will speak of you and the more they will use your service. Strategic planning is underpinned by your mission, vision, and values. So will your decision make your organization create greater impact and outcome for beneficiaries? Will it create efficiencies or savings? Will it enable the expansion or diversification of service provision? Include all the factors you can think of, and remember, it's what happens in the long run that counts. So your strategic plan will include your strategic purpose, position, desired outcome, mission, vision, values, tools for analysis, key goals, and action planning. So your mission creates focus. Your vision provides direction. And your values define the behavior of your organization, the culture of the organization, for want of another word. So simply stated, before your organization decides to launch a new program, your leadership team should discuss whether or not the service is in alignment with your organization, with the core reason it exists, with your mission. So for example, if your organization's mission is to provide exercise for elderly people at lunchtime in luncheon clubs, say, and if you have someone in your team who wants to do Saturday schools because they think it's a really good idea to run a Saturday school, there's nothing wrong with running a Saturday school. It's absolutely a great thing to do. But your mission, your organization's mission is maybe something like creating healthy citizens within a particular geographical location. And your way, one of your ways of doing this is to look at movement, maybe movement and diet and other things. But an after school club or Saturday school is not really in alignment with your mission. So yes, I hope I'm making sense. So it's very important. And some organizations you see, they chase funding. So they're doing this particular thing. They might be providing movement for the elderly, but there's a funding pot over there that does something else. So I think, well, we'll apply for that money because it's going for this thing. You really need to think about when you're applying for funding, that the funding you're applying for is in alignment with the work that you do, and you're not just chasing pots of money. Because often it shows up in your application that you're not really focused and probably not in alignment with the previous work you've been doing. Now, people can introduce new programs and projects in their organization. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you introduce a new program or project, it needs to be in alignment. So if you're providing exercise for elderly people, say, you could say you want to provide exercise for school children to look at obesity of school children. It's in alignment. It's exercise, health and fitness. You could say you want to provide movement for mothers at home with young babies in a mother and toddler group. Again, it's in alignment. It's another program. So don't forget, do consider that. So what's a vision statement? A vision statement describes where the organization desires to be when it achieves its mission. What's the long-term goal? What is it you want to achieve? Alzheimer's Association says they want a world without Alzheimer's disease. Very simple. Microsoft, at its founding, said a computer on every desk and in every home. Well, they've almost achieved that, I think, don't you think? And LinkedIn said they create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. Well, I suppose it's on its way, if any of you use LinkedIn. So a vision statement can be quite simple, but quite impactful. You know, a world without Alzheimer's. I mean, that's a goal, isn't it? That's really something. That's a vision, I should say. That's really something. And I suppose the work that they do then is in alignment with this vision. A mission statement. A mission statement is in some ways an action-orientated vision statement, declaring the purpose an organization serves to its users. It often includes a general description of the organization, its function and its objectives. So for example, TED said, spread ideas, TED Talks. Anyone listen to a TED Talk? That's all they do, spread ideas. totally on point, never deviate. I've never seen Ted do anything else but spread ideas. Tesla to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And IKEA to create a better everyday life for the many people. Maybe that's translated from Swedish, why it reads that way. Not entirely sure about IKEA's mission statement, but I think Ted is really on point. 2 words for their mission statement. And values. The values reflect the culture of an organization, and all volunteers and staff and leaders can tap into those values to create a culture that supports the organization's mission and vision. The Ubele Initiative CEO, Yvonne Field, is passionate about intergenerational working. And our organization reflects that, you know. Those of us who've been with the organization for a long time like to support our younger colleagues, and we enjoy learning from our younger colleagues too. Where in this organization, the culture is one we're less into being critical, we're more into being supportive of each other. So that's the culture of the organization, the Ubele Initiative. And sometimes when people come in and they're new, they're not quite clear about our culture, but they learn as they go along. So Guide Dogs for the Blind. Their vision statement is Guide Dogs for the Blind envisions a world with greater inclusion and opportunities. By independence, by optimizing the unique capabilities of people and dogs. The mission statement, Guide Dogs for the Blind empowers lives by creating exceptional partnerships between people, dogs, and communities. Their values and behaviors. They say Guide Dogs for the Blind is one organization with one set of values operating in multiple locations. We are aligned around a common vision and mission and hold ourselves and each other responsible for operating by the following values and behaviors. And you can go to the website and have a read. So most organizations have a mission, vision, and values, mission, vision, and values statement. I'm going to move this out of the way because I can't see my slides. Okay. Any questions?
Yvonne, there was one question on, I think it was mission drift. I think you covered it, but you may want to say a little bit about, you covered it in relation to funding and following the funding and not your mission. Maybe if you want to say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think not much more to add, really. I think it's a place lots of people find themselves in, and it's understandable, you know, when you're trying to find funding, you're trying to stay afloat, you're trying to deliver your services, and you see an opportunity for funding, and you think, oh, we're going to go for this. But I think there's much more success in seeking funding to sustain the work that you already do, as opposed to trying to do something different and not in alignment. It doesn't empower your organization, it doesn't strengthen it, and it just dissipates energy. And you're oftentimes the skills are not even in the organization to deliver this other thing. And funders can see it on the application. It kind of becomes quite obvious that the person has drifted away from their mission to doing something else, to just getting an opportunity. Thank you, Carl, and thank you, questioner. So we talked about, oh, my slides are hidden on this thing. A gap. So it's what's your current state? What's your future state? And what actions do we need to do to close the gap? So wherever you are as an organization now, or wherever you want to be, you know, there is this gap in between. And so what tools will we use then to look at closing that gap? So there's some simple tools we use for analysis. And you might know some of these, I'm sure you do. And it's a SWOT analysis, the Pest tool. I'm also introducing the problem tree analysis and also your financial plans. You know, you'll be surprised to know, or you may not be, that if you look at your accounts for 3 years and you compare your spend, you look at just the figures, the figures will give you an indication of activity. And there's always a place where you can look to see, well, what can we do different? How could we save money there? Or how did, you know, it's just interesting looking at your finances and doing a comparison over a few years, or even from 1 year to the next. Ade does a lot of work around cash flow forecasting, budgeting, and so his presentations are available for download and for watching on our YouTube channel. So I suggest you go there. There's some more sophisticated tools like flowcharts, Gantt charts, critical path analysis, but we won't be doing that today. But so a SWOT is a quadrant, and it has you look at situations related to your organization, which are internal, external, positive, and negative. So the strengths of your organization are positive things, and opportunities are positive things. You know, your strengths and your weaknesses are internal, and your external things are the threats and opportunities. So for a minute, I would like you to think about your own SWOT in your organization, and just write down one thing in each category that relates to your organization, one thing you can think of. So what's a strength? What's your key strength? Now, before you do that, let me just say something. Sometimes a situation can be a strength and a weakness, and maybe even an opportunity. So for example, if you're a brand new organization, you've just received a lot of funding and you're really fire up and ready to go, that can be a strength because you're bringing new ideas. The people who've been doing it for a long time are probably a bit jaded, probably a bit tired, you know, probably using some old practices, but you're quite innovative and new. And so it's a strength, and beneficiaries might be drawn to you because you're fresh and lively and new. It can be a weakness because you haven't got much experience possibly, and you're obviously, it could be a weakness because you're like in competition with people who are much more established. So you're wondering if, you know, you're going to be able to attract beneficiaries within that area. And it's also an opportunity. When you're new, there's an opportunity for growth, there's an opportunity for expansion, there's an opportunity for partnership, there's all sorts of opportunities. So sometimes you might find there are attributes which fit into more than one box. So for yourselves, think about a particular strength of your organization, and something that you would consider a weakness, and something where you consider an opportunity, and what's your current threat. Even if you haven't started an organization and you're thinking of starting one, you can also do a SWOT on your potential strengths, your potential weaknesses, potential opportunities, and potential threats. So this SWOT is not just about if you're in operation, if you're thinking of and you're planning to start, you can also think about these things. So the next analytical tool I want to share with you is the Pest or Pesto. Understanding the big picture of an environment in which an organization is operating. You know, we don't operate in isolation. We're affected by the environment, politics, economics, global issues, global pandemic. There are risks associated with the society that we're in. There's a risk associated with the need for a product or service, growth or decline, and the position, potential, and direction for an organization. It is a generic orientation tool, finding out where an organization is in the context of what is happening outside that could affect what happens inside an organization. So we look at the political changes which could impact an organization. So Brexit, would it impact you? Rise of new parties, would that impact you? Did it impact you when Farage and that lot had these new parties, current political leadership, COVID? And there might be local political changes which may impact. You know, sometimes you're in a local authority and it changes from Labour to Conservative to Liberal, or it becomes a hung situation. And it can impact, if you're funded by them, it can have an impact, can't it? How do you think you're going to be affected now with local authority spending if you're reliant on local authority funds, health authority funds? I want you to think about each of these. So economically, inflation, austerity, unemployment, job growth, or losses, government spending. So something like government spending can be political, and it also can be economic in terms of what is the government releasing from central to local, and what's local releasing to the community, and so on and so forth. How is local government spending locally? How is central government spending nationally? What policies are in place? You know, do you read policies in relation to the work that you do? There are so many policy papers, you know, you need to keep abreast of changes so that you can stay ahead. If you're working with young people, what are the policies around young people, youth? The other area for Pest is social. So we look at racial injustice, refugee crisis, income gap, food security, housing, immigration, access to health, and you can add others. And when it comes to technology, there's a widespread use of artificial intelligence and internet, cybercrime, cybersecurity. On the 11th of February, there's a cyber event Ubele are doing that I'm hosting in February to just look at this. Yes, it's on the 11th, Thursday, the 11th of February, and you're all welcome. So you need to know how secure you are when you're on the internet. Most of us are working from home now. How are you managing people's information in relation to GDPR? How has Brexit impacted GDPR regulations? Because you know GDPR is a European directive. So what are the legal issues around equality and human rights, legal aid, COVID again? Are we going to have a COVID pass to travel, to do anything, to access services if we don't take the vaccine? What's going to be our rights, our human rights, our legal rights? And how would that impact your organization, your work? And environmentally, climate change, waste management. Do you have an environmental policy in your organization? And you know, the SWOT and the Pest, you know, they're not to be done in isolation. You do them with your stakeholders, your volunteers, your staff members, your board members, as many of you as can get around the table is the best way to go through these things and have these analyses. It's fun, you know. Make it a nice kind of social thing. And if you're using a Zoom or something, still. But it's really important that you do these things, especially now. Any burning questions?
Yvonne,
Mm?
at this juncture, I've got two questions. One, I think I'll answer to enable you to move on, but one I'll pose to you from, I hope I've pronounced this right, Mahara Haq, and please forgive me if I pronounced it wrong. And the question is, how soon would you undertake strategic planning for a new organization? And considering that priorities may change and your focus might do, especially earlier on, should you keep yourself flexible to change with demand? So I presume the sum total of that question is, how soon would you recommend undertaking strategic planning for a new organization?
I think a new organization should sit down with however many of you are putting this together, and even if it's just you, what's your mission, what's your vision, what's your values? What underpins the work that you plan to do? And what projects are you going to run in alignment with your mission, vision? So yes, I would sit down and figure all that out beforehand. Absolutely. I'd look at SWOT. What are my potential strengths, weaknesses? What are the opportunities for me doing this new project, setting up this new organization and running these projects? Absolutely. I'd have all that down on paper. And my financial planning, my budget. Because these things I want to run, these projects I want to run, how much are going to cost to run? What's the cost? And then you have a better opportunity to see, well, where would I go for funding? Because you know all this now, you've figured it out. This is who I am, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going. So if somebody comes and throws something else at you, you say, no, we don't do that. It's not what we do. We do this thing. So we're going in this direction. And you're focused and clear and attractive to funders. And of course, change, you review, once you plan, you review after a year, 6 months, 2 years, and you make changes accordingly in line with your mission, vision, and your values. I hope that helps. So what are strategic objectives? Strategic objectives are the big picture. Oh, I saw a question when somebody asked about Brexit, what the implications might be in relation to Brexit. I think the implications in relation to Brexit, many are legal. Someone was talking about the working time directive recently and whether or not Britain will scrap it. So I don't know if you know what that is, but if you're running an organization and you're employing staff, or you're indeed a staff member, you may want to look at how human resources are going to be managed legally, having left the European Union, because many of these human rights, I would say, favorable human rights, favorable working conditions, a lot of them came through the European Union. With Brexit, if you're selling products as part of a social enterprise, and if they're coming through the European borders, the tariffs, the new tariffs and taxes and stuff could have an implication. So in response to the person that asked about Brexit, I would do some research and look at the impact of Brexit, us leaving the European Union. And also I mentioned GDPR and our event on the 11th of February. We'll have a GDPR lawyer to talk a little bit about the implications. So I hope that answers that question. Strategic objectives are the big picture goals for the organization. They describe what the organization will do to try to fulfill its mission. Strategic objectives are usually some sort of performance goal. For example, to launch a new project, increase beneficiary participation, increase funding income, or develop new programs. So big goals. Some big goals I just thought of was increase funding and resources, recruit new board members, the impact of COVID global pandemic on service delivery, launch of a new project, recruit new staff, increase beneficiary participation, include more statutory requirements, relocation of physical space. Well, at the moment, that's something else. But, maybe when this is all over, you might want to move to new accommodation, start afresh, develop partnerships, alliances, and you may want to automate your services, or a part of them at least. So I'm going to look at stakeholders. Stakeholders tend to be managers, outreach workers, board members, development workers, beneficiaries, organisation partners and funders. These are the people who have an interest in your organisation. If you can think of any other stakeholders, please add them in your notes. So I showed you that diagram, but for your own organisation, these are some questions that will guide you. Which groups or individuals make up your stakeholders? Which are most impacted by any change you might make? So remember when I talked earlier about the organisation that provides services to the elderly, movement and health, and they wanted to do a Saturday school for children? In that situation, who would be most impacted by any change? You have to think about these things when you decide to make changes in your organisation. Who will be most impacted? Which groups or individuals are driving the change? Sometimes in organisations, you know how they're saying sometimes in companies, the CEO thinks he's in charge, but it's really the secretary. It's always interesting in organizations who actually drives the change. Sometimes it's not even the person at the top. Sometimes it's people further down the chain who are much more influential, but you need to look at that. Who's the decision maker? What's the pattern of relationships? Is also another interesting one. I was working with an organization and the building that they use, many of the board members have an interest in the building, so the decisions that are made are not in the best interest of the community centre operating in the building, but the interests are made in, the decisions are made in the interest of the building. So the poor community centre ends up paying for things like asbestos removal and all sorts of different costs, which is quite interesting when you consider a landlord and a community organisation relationship. But relationships can vary, but so you have to think about who's in your organization, why they're there, and as stakeholders, what are they, how are they benefiting you, who are the gatekeepers, who has a major interest in the success or failure. Gatekeepers are another interesting one. I was trying to provide access to support to a group, and it's been taking me nearly three or 4 weeks. I contacted them in December, and the person who's doing the gatekeeping, they're having meetings with me, but they're not the actual person who I need to be working with this organization. And I never know why people do this kind of thing, but it's 4 weeks. Whereas if that person just allowed the people in the organization that I need to be working with to have access to me, we could be 4 weeks in with the support. Who has a major interest in the success or failure of your organization? Who should be informed about what? It's very important. People in organizations get very upset about not knowing what's going on. Nobody told me. I wasn't aware. And sometimes it's not deliberate, but it's just that the flow of communication isn't working as effectively as it should. So you have to keep people informed. And whose collaboration is essential? Who do you need to work with? Who is it important to get on with? If we go back to my movement for the elderly, for example, I think it's important that you have a little collaboration with the community health centre or whatever the local health resources. Be nice, wouldn't it? GPs as well. I forgot the actual term for the health, but you know who it is. So collaboration is good, and who does care about what you do, who knows about it, and who can do it, who can help. The other tool we'll look at is a problem tree, and I like this tool myself because it's quite simple and it gets to the root of the matter. Pardon the pun. So for the purpose of this exercise, I'm looking at the global pandemic. So that's the cause, that's the root problem. The root cause, sorry. And then the root cause is global pandemic, and it creates problems. And then these problems have an effect. So I want you to take a few minutes. How much time have we got? Let's have a look. Okay, so the global pandemic is the cause. Write down your problems that it's causing in terms of your service delivery, and then write down the effects. How much? Okay. And remember, when you get back to your organizations, you know, think about doing these things in groups with others. You could even work with partner organizations that do similar things. So that's the problem tree. Let me know in the chat if you found it useful. Oops. Right, so the problem tree, it's good for breaking down problems into small bits. Interrelated causes can be considered also. And it shows the causes and effects right there. And it helps to build shared understanding of issues. So let's now look at action plans. Is there a question in the... Okay. Action plans. You need to have a clear description for each action, completion dates, only one person responsible for achieving the action, one person responsible for certifying that the action has been completed properly. If there are several projects being done at the same time, the actions may need to be prioritized. So in order of importance or urgency. So that's an action plan template. And you know, you can all have access to the slides. I saw lots of questions asking for the slides. You'll definitely have access to them. And so if the activity is develop an ISO 9000 service, the description of that is a process, it's an application process, isn't it? And the due date would be the 1st of April 2021. You know, it's a procedure. And the person responsible would be Timothy, and Tony would verify that it was actually done. The second thing on this particular action plan for this organization is increase beneficiary take-up. And to do that, we might need to do more outreach and social media marketing. The deadline for that is the 6th of May 2021. And the indicator there would be an increase in beneficiaries, a noticeable increase. Rhoda would be responsible, and Frank would verify that it actually happened. And the activity is to promote workshops and probably a bit more sales and marketing. I'd say promotion in your promoting your event, your workshops, and the deadline 6th of April 2021, 4 workshops done. Ruth was responsible and Susan verified that it actually took place. And you have a community bus, lucky you. So vehicle maintenance, the date for that is 8th of the 6th, 21. Procedure off, responsible, Ernest made sure it was done. Okay, so we've kind of reached the end of our session, and you can ask any questions that you'd like to ask. I'd just like to say that a failure to plan sometimes is planning to fail. So it's really important to think about planning at any stage, you know, pre-starting, once you've started. There's no bad time to plan. It gives you a sense of direction and purpose and keeps you on course. Thank you. My name is Yvonne Witter, and we can take any questions now if there are any.
Just before we open up a little more widely, I've been scouring the chat line, and you posed a question. Any feedback on the problem tree that people may want to post or just share? And
Yes.
I've got a few that I've captured. I'll just read them out to you just as a quick feedback, because I know you've been busy talking to the audience. So if I
I don't know what's happening.
And if I just read back a few that I've picked up so far.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah.
And there may be others coming in. The first one is, love using the problem tree with our clients. Never used it for our own businesses, for our own business before. The other one, the problem tree is very useful. Another comment was, yes, I found it very useful to me. It is very useful to me. And the final one that I picked up in that cluster at that time was, the problem tree allowed me to write down issues bouncing around in my head. Seeing it in writing made me automatically think of some possible solutions.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. At this point, I'll scour some more whilst other questions come in or other conversations take place. But in response to your specific question on how people found that that last exercise, I thought it would be worth feeding back. There might be others coming in. I'll just check. So as Yvonne said, are there any questions that you haven't posted, anything that's just come up as a result that we haven't answered, or anything we may want to elaborate on? Okay, I'm taking that
There's
silence.
a question.
Okay, there is.
From Report Festival.
Okay, there's an hand up from Rapport Festival.
Yes, I saw that earlier as well.
Okay, Rapport Festival, are you online?
Hello, Rapport.
Earth to Rapport.
Come in.
It might be having connectivity problem. Is it something you could put in writing? If you can't,
have a look here.
I'll just see if there's anything. Okay, a few feedback.
Okay, there's a
question. Yeah.
Oh yes, I'm answering. Can I answer Palmer Black? Thank you, Palmer. Oh, Rapport Festival's with us.
I think it may have been an error. Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
I think it was a technical error. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You could go ahead and then answer the one you can answer.
Yeah, thank you. She said, found the whole session very useful. I'm much clearer on how to deal with some issues before they become problems. And I also have some answers to questions I was asking myself before the session. Oh, that's really good. Thank you. That's really great when you come to a session and it's answered questions you already had. Good. I'm happy about that. Thank you.
The next question after that is Mahara Hack has asked the question, how do you keep yourself motivated to achieve your strategies, especially when things are so tough? So how do you keep yourself motivated?
Kind of unique to everybody, you know, passion, you know, I think running any organization or business, you have to have this basic passion about it. But you know, one way to motivate yourself is to surround yourself with people who share your interest. They're running organizations as well. I know it could be turned into a pity party, but you know, at this time. But let's hope it doesn't. You know, hopefully you can boost each other up. I always feel uplifted when I meet with my colleagues. You know, I don't know, I just do. But yeah, so even if you're a small organization, maybe a sister organization or a brother organization doing similar work or even different work, but I would just try and meet with people on Zoom and, you know, and talk about things, see if that helps to keep you a bit more motivated. I don't know.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Just before I read through some of the others that's coming through, there's one from Paris, and she says, how do you use this when needing to pivot? We're an organization of 7+ years. So how do you use this? And I presume it's a tool and or strategic planning for the organization. And there's another correction I need to make, but I'll do that after you've answered that question. So
I think if you need to, yeah, I think if you need to pivot, again, you're looking at your mission, your vision, your values, you're looking at the programs you want to run. So if you want to make a change, and then you do your planning, don't you? Use the tools. I would go through the same process, because your big goals, you know, if you remember that slide on big goals, you list them there, won't you? The areas where you would need to pivot, and then you create your action, your list of actions to meet those goals. What do you think, Carl? Any different take on that? I don't know.
How do you use it? I mean, the thing about strategic plan and strategic planning, there are two things. There's the planning process, which will take you through a series of actions, activities. And there may be some short-term goals arising from that. And it may be circumstances like Brexit, like COVID, that throws you into that cauldron. And then there's obviously the strategic plan itself, almost call it your Bible, your framework within which you're working. And I think some of the questions that are being posed are about the timeliness of them, frequency of them. And I think so much of it will depend so much on your own circumstances. But as a general rule of thumb, I would always say strategic plans should be reviewed. It doesn't mean you have to change them fundamentally on an annual basis, and or if there's a crisis. So if there's a major crisis, you have to review, and it may require restructuring of an organization as a result of that major crisis. So that gives you an opportunity. A new funding stream allied to your mission and value may throw up a massive opportunity that you hadn't thought about, and that will require you relooking at it. That's why I always say strategic plans should be reviewed. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to change it. What will likely to change on a more regular basis are your objectives, and more likely to be your delivery action plan. And I think keeping those balanced will help you go through. And sometimes a strategic plan doesn't have to be no more than one page of a document, to be honest, especially when you're starting out. You want a framework to help you. And as you become more mature in terms of stability and the like, it will grow, because as the organization grows and picks up, the demands will pick up, and therefore you need to grow. So for those who are struggling and thinking, I need this large document on day one, it's an evolutionary process. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, you've just echoed what I've said. Yeah, exactly. Totally in agreement with all of it. Yes, it's really about those big goals, those big, you know, what you want to do, what are the different things you want to do, what are the changes you want to make in terms of pivoting. And as Carl said, it depends on what's happening outside. If you've done your pestle and you've done your SWOT, you'll know what's changed. So where you need to pivot. And as Carl said, if there's a big new funding opportunity in alignment with your mission, then you know you need to pivot in that direction. Great.
Okay. So I think we tried to cover, I think I covered the Paris one in terms of the reviewing. What does it look like? Paris also asked a question, Yvonne. What does a strategy look like when you're not in setup mode? And I think I tried to allude to that in the sense of you could have a one sheet.
Just one page, yeah.
Yeah.
Just a pager.
And I think, and I'll just say a little bit, and you could finish off, Yvonne, is that some people do believe that a strategy isn't a strategy unless it has all these fine diagrams and flow charts and cash flow predictions and bits and pieces. And I hope that people don't go away thinking you don't have a plan if you don't have one of these documents.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what you think, Yvonne.
I just think keep it simple, and that's why I kept the presentation without making it you know, too convoluted. You know, just try and keep it simple. I think you do need to look at what you're doing. You know, you do need to look at externalities, how you're affected by external legislation, politics, and so on. How will it impact on your service delivery, your funding, and everything? It's important to look at those things. But it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out thing. You just need to be aware and make a note. You know, make a note, structure it. Barbara wants to know if there's a template. I'll have a look, Barbara. But again, as Carl said, it's a fairly simple document. You know, just your mission, vision, your values, you follow the slides and just jot down things. All right, anything else? Okay, Pierce Rose Standiford, when you say one page, are you referring to a document like Canvas, would you say, Carl? Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with a number of organizations, and they've got when they just started out with 2-page of A4. Yeah. And by the time 3-4 years in, they're into page 12. And so it's where you need to start. The key thing is you need to start with a route map, and that's what this strategy does. It allows you to have a route map.
Yes.
And fundamentally, it allows you to do what you said right at the outset, Yvonne, to identify the best placed funding stream rather than chasing the funding.
Not a good idea.
Start off with one page, absolutely.
Right. I think there's one more. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. No, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your feedback. It's been very helpful. And we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Carl, is there anything you'd like to say? Anything more?
Just at this stage, just to thank everyone for taking part and for your participation, your questions, your involvement, and your continued interest in some of the areas. I know there some of these things might seem like a lot of information all at once, but the key is for you to be able to go backwards and forwards, check out what's good for you, take out of it the things that will work for you. That's the key. Find the things that will work for you, and then take that forward. All of these are good models and stuff, but they may not all work for you at the same time. So pick and choose. Be a market. What do you call it when you're when you go shopping and you're perusing Tesco's or Sainsbury's shelf? Choose the thing that you want.
Yeah. Don't let your eyes draw you in and pick up things off the shelf you don't need.
Absolutely. And without further ado, I've made the correction. So we'll be sending out further information on the next webinar. So keep your eyes and ears open for that. The newsletters will be coming out via the circulars. Keep an eye open for that.